In Florida, more than 100 people have now been confirmed dead in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, according to state medical examiners, making it the deadliest storm to hit that state in nearly a century. Hurricane Ian knocked out power to millions, left thousands on the west coast of the peninsula homeless, and threw Florida's already teetering insurance system into disarray. Fixing the damage will take tens of billions of dollars. But wait, it's not all bad news. There's some good news for the state's governor, who's getting high marks for his response to all of that in a new national poll. 54% of those Americans surveyed said they approve of DeSantis' response to Hurricane Ian, according to results last week from YouGov and The Economist. That includes 80% of Republicans and, more surprisingly, nearly half of Democrats. That should make DeSantis and his hyper-partisan team very, very happy as he prepares for re-election in November and a possible presidential run in 2024. But to be honest, how many people have really heard about Hurricane Ian lately, or for that matter, nationally? How many know what actually happened on the ground? You probably saw DeSantis receiving President Biden to survey the damage, a rare bipartisan moment for a governor who has painted Biden as the evil architect of a tyrannical woke empire. And you probably saw the raft of stories announcing that DeSantis had put all that behind him as his state needed help. Maybe that non-Trumpy performance of bipartisanship in a moment of need was the basis for his national poll bump. Maybe. And on the subject of Trump, maybe DeSantis just got points from the public for not throwing paper towels at hurricane victims. The bar on the right has gotten pretty low in recent years. But if you think Ron DeSantis deserves high marks for his handling of the hurricane, you might want to take a closer look. Take Lee County, which took a direct hit from Ian, and where more than half of all the storm fatalities have occurred. Officials and reporters have asked why evacuation orders came so late to Lee County when they knew even a small storm surge could cause deadly flash flooding. Even as neighboring Charlotte County had evacuated its coastal areas well before the storm, that area had only 5 recorded deaths. Lee County has at least 55. DeSantis' response? Blame the media.
Why do you stand behind Lee County's decision to not have that mandatory evacuation until the day before the storm?
Well, where was your industry station when the storm hit? Were you guys in Lee County? No, you were in Tampa. So that's, they were following the weather track.
Never mind that there were many reporters in Lee County, in Fort Myers and Cape Coral as the hurricane struck. DeSantis, in that interview and elsewhere, he said Ian wasn't even supposed to hit there.
But, 72 hours, they weren't even in the cone. 48 hours, they were on the periphery.
Lee County wasn't in the cone, he said. The thing is, storm experts and PolitiFact pointed out that DeSantis was wrong on that. Parts of Lee County were in the National Hurricane Center's projected storm cone in 8 straight advisories, and they evacuated only when the storm was upon them. DeSantis' re-election campaign team, led by Firebrand spokeswoman Christina Pushaw, spent literally days on social media trying to defend their incorrect reading of the hurricane maps. Sound familiar? Ah, yes. Remember Sharpiegate? Maybe DeSantis is just trying to live up to his mini-Trump moniker. When that dishonest defense went nowhere, DeSantis again did what he does best and blamed the media.
Well, look, I think part of it, quite frankly, you have national regime media that they wanted to see Tampa because they thought that that'd be worse for Florida. That's how these people think. Yeah. They don't care about the people of this state. They don't care about the people of this community. They want to use storms and destruction from storms as a way to advance their agenda.
I don't know where to begin with that statement, honestly. Not only does that inflame hate and violence against the media by MAGA folks, it's also ignorant and offensive. The idea that there's regime media that roots for deaths. One of my producers on this show, on this segment, is a lifelong Floridian with loved ones in Tampa Bay. Is the governor of Florida really saying that Florida journalists want death and destruction anywhere, let alone their own state? It's sick stuff. And notice he said all of this to a far-right reporter wearing a T-shirt for the 3%er militia and is alleged to have entered the Capitol on January 6th, according to HuffPost reporting. By the way, on the subject of fashion choices, do please notice DeSantis's and his deliberate decision to oversee the hurricane response, not in a sweater vest with the governor's seal on it, but with re-election campaign gear. Campaign gear that he wore to hard-hit Arcadia last week, where his photo op amid the hurricane relief operations disrupted the hurricane relief operations.
Frustration mounted as civilians were told to pause their relief operations for several hours as Governor Ron DeSantis toured the area.
Our hands are tied.
I'm not trying to be rude, but we've been doing this very thing one street over, and the only reason we're not over there
because the governor's.
That's right.
I understand.
So why does that have to stop right now? It's the same thing we've been doing before anybody was here.
What incredible leadership. Almost as if Ron DeSantis doesn't want to lead a disaster response as much as he wants to be seen leading it. And don't even get me started on his pristine white Wellington boots, perfect for a disaster zone. Look, let's give credit to Ron DeSantis for doing one thing right, for asking for help from the federal government. The same government he says is trying to convert your kids to woke grooming. The same government he says is making up climate change as a left-wing power grab. The same government whose public health experts he's called tyrants. As with COVID, which has killed more than 80,000 Floridians, DeSantis has made a virtue of not taking the health and safety of his own state's residents seriously enough, and of instead blaming and smearing the media when it presents him with the facts. So forgive me if I don't join the 54% of my fellow Americans who are bizarrely applauding DeSantis' handling of this horrific hurricane. Joining me now is former Congressman Charlie Crist. He served as Florida's Republican governor from 2007 to 2011, and he's now challenging Ron DeSantis in November for his old job, this time as the official Democratic nominee for governor. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. Ron DeSantis says the media and Democrats like yourself were rooting for the storm to hit Tampa Bay, where you live. But aside from that offensive accusation, how do you think his response to Ian overall has been?
Pretty poor. And you laid it out perfectly, Mehdi. Thank you for having me on, by the way. You know, when you look at the fact that over 100 Floridians died from this storm, that the evacuation of Lee County didn't take place until it was too late. I mean, I live in Tampa Bay. You are correct. St. Petersburg, Pinellas County. Our county was calling for an evacuation the day before Lee County did. And why the governor didn't think it was important to evacuate when the storm was bearing down on those poor people is beyond my comprehension. It is inexplicable, and it is irresponsible, and obviously it turned out to be extraordinarily reckless. That's not the kind of leadership that Floridians deserve. It's not the kind of leadership that Floridians want. They deserve much better than that. It's the reason I'm running for governor, because I just think that on point after point after point, including a woman's right to choose, this governor has let the people of Florida down in his pursuit of a presidential ambition in 2024. And it's just justified.
I want to come back to abortion and choice in a moment. Just sticking with the hurricane, Ron DeSantis is a pretty authoritarian governor, as we've pointed out on this show before. He has fired and replaced half the school board in Blue Broward County, plus the sheriff. He's threatened the election supervisor. In another case, he suspended a state's attorney. He's very happy and very public about exercising power when he wants to, even powers he doesn't really have. But when asked about bright red Lee County's decision to delay its evacuation, a decision that may have cost lives, he gets defensive and blames the media. I mean, evacuation orders do come from county officials, but could the governor in this case have done more to get people out of Lee County and save lives?
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I was governor, and you understand that as governor, you have tremendous opportunity to influence what happens in your state in a positive way, if you're motivated that way. And I was. Why this governor wasn't motivated for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Lee County more than he was is unconscionable. It's inexplicable, as I said before. Not only that, but, you know, during Friday before the storm hit, he went to a football game, was AWOL for almost 20 hours. No more reporting on what was happening to the hurricane as it was getting closer and closer to Florida. Another gap in leadership, if you will. And that kind of lack of leadership is exactly what Florida doesn't need.
And as all of this is going on, reminded again of the DeSantis war on science and public health, and specifically vaccines. Last week, his hand-picked Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, tweeted that the COVID vaccine causes heart problems and recommended that men ages 18 to 35 don't get it. Experts say that is nonsense. They also say that people will die if they don't get vaccinated and boosted. Do you believe DeSantis and his administration are responsible for Florida's very high COVID death toll, the highest in the country this past summer?
I don't think there's any question about that. I think you're exactly right. And, you know, people talk about the fact that he kept this open, he kept schools open. It got personal to me. What happened is he issued an executive order saying that essentially that children couldn't wear masks in school. And so my 5-year-old niece ends up going to school, public school in Pinellas County, who didn't challenge his order. 2 days later, you know, nobody's wearing a mask. 2 days later, she gets COVID. Well, of course, she goes home at night to her family, to a 2-month-old sister. 2 days later, the 2-month-old sister, my 2-month-old niece, gets COVID. That's what he's done. That's what he's perpetrated upon our state. And that lack of leadership is appalling, and it's deadly.
So given that lack of leadership, given what, as you say, he's perpetrated on the state, I have to ask, how are you still trailing to this guy? 538's polling average shows you consistently trailing DeSantis by 6 points or more. That's been relatively unchanged all summer. What are you doing to turn that around? How are you going to turn that around?
Thank you for the question. The last 3 polls that I have seen in the last week to 10 days, one showed him ahead by 7, one showed me ahead by 6, another had us down by 1. So I really would make the argument that this is probably a dead heat. And you know what happens in these polls, Betty? They oversample Republicans. I don't know why they still do that, but they do it. And the big, really game changer in this election, I believe, is going to be a woman's right to choose. And we're having a whole day today of choice in Florida, making events all across the state. We have 1,000 volunteers scattered throughout the state from north to south, making sure that women understand, which they already do, but just reminding folks that this is on the ballot in Florida because Governor DeSantis has already signed a bill that says that you have 15 weeks, and after that, you are banned from exercising your right to choose completely, and no exceptions for rape or incest. This issue is on the ballot in our state and probably most states in the country because of what the Supreme Court did, of course, back in June, overturning Roe v. Wade.
So let me ask you then, given the importance you're placing on abortion rights and choice in this coming election, why should liberals in Florida who are worried about choice and abortion rights, why should they replace a Republican governor with a former Republican governor who wasn't known for being very pro-choice? Or have you changed a lot since those days?
It's a perfect question. So as the Republican governor of Florida in 2010, I actually vetoed an anti-abortion bill as a Republican governor. It's where my heart has always been. It's what I've always done. It's why I have a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood and endorsed by Planned Parenthood, as well as NARAL. I'm very comfortable with my record. Floridian women know what my record is. That's why I think we're going to defeat DeSantis and win this election because of the women vote.